Welcome back to the Hirewell Hot Corner, where sports and recruitment meet. I am your host, Dan Spatel, joined as always by Louie Marisi. Today is an exciting episode, a first in the HHC series. We have our first guest. Joel Lalgee is our business development consultant with Hirewell. Joel, how's it going?
Going great. Great to be here. Glad to be the first guest too. Super exciting.
No one better than Joel to be our first guest, and you'll see why as you go, if you don't already know who he is. Louie, great as always to have you. What's going on in your world and the world of sports today?
It's a big world. We got all four major sports going, and if you want to throw soccer in there, we got Champions League as well. It's busy time. We got the Phillies up 2-1 in the World Series. Football right in the thick of it. Hockey's just getting started. Basketball's getting started. And like I mentioned, Champions League going to the group stages or getting out of the group stages to the knockout round soon. So busy, and I'm here for it.
Most exciting time in sports. NFL trade deadline just passed. Our teams made a trade. Steelers and Bears. Chase Claypool heading back to the Midwest. So that's exciting. You hit on soccer. My fiance is actually a high school soccer coach. Her girls just finished up their season.
Nice.
With a district title, made it into the state tournament. And now in a couple weeks, a couple of them are going to be signing their national letters of intent. National Signing Day for high school students is in 2 weeks. And so it's an exciting time all around for sports athletes of all ages.
That's incredible. Congrats to her and the team.
Yeah. I mean, and with National Signing Day coming up, it's an exciting time for high school athletes, college athletes, and more recently with the addition of the NILs in the last couple of years. For those who aren't familiar, NIL means name, image, and likeness. It's an opportunity for college athletes to make money off of their college careers, make money off of their name, image, and likeness. And so I know, we talk a lot about sports and how do we relate things to the world of recruitment. NILs is a big way for these athletes to brand themselves before they become a professional. Some of my personal favorites are DeColdest Crawford, the Nebraska wide receiver, partnering with an HVAC company. They say if you have DeColdest in the state, you know who to ask about it. So
that's so cool. I love
kudos
that.
to them for the enthusiasm and the creativity. CJ Stroud was a big one. He signed a deal with Express. He actually bought his whole team new suits before their season opener in primetime against Notre Dame. And then Bronny James is another big one. He signed with, I think, Beats and Nike, right, Louie?
Yeah, wow. Doing a little bit with both of them. I mean, it's crazy. Granted, he gets the royal treatment because of his dad, but he's going to be a star, or at least what seems to be a star in the future here.
Him and his brother. So yeah, so I mean, how is this relevant to our world of recruitment? Either one of you want to jump in?
Oh, man, I love this development just in general, because I would think too, like a lot of these college stars probably already even have like social media brands themselves. So I'm sure it was a moment in time before they capitalized on it. But wasn't that rule? Like you couldn't make any money at all. So I mean, it seems like a smart evolution, because if you're building a brand on social media and people are monetizing it, that's the easy way to do brand deals and that type of stuff anyway. But yeah, I love that, man. I think it's very cool, and it seems like it's fair too, because they seem to entertain people a lot.
I think part of it was trying to keep kids in college longer, and further incentivize them not going to professional sports after 1 or 2 years in college. So it'll make the NCAA more money. They can say it's for their own good for the sake of getting an education, but we all know that's not the driving force behind it.
It's always money, man. Come on, let's be honest.
And I fully support it as well. Some of these kids don't come from financially stable environments, and they're in college on a full ride. But as far as the resources to have food in their stomachs, things of that nature, like they need money. And if they're excellent athletes and can make some money while they're in college, I mean, more power too. I mean, there's guys making millions of dollars in college because they're superstars and they're the next generation. So I think it's a great way to segue into why we have Joel on our show today. He's an expert when it comes to branding on LinkedIn, TikTok, all of the above, and and an athlete, and an athlete. Can't forget about that. But he's the the model in our company, at least, on how to keep yourself relevant in recruiting and just kind of keeping people or having yourself be front of mind. So talk to us a little bit how you kind of tackled that to start.
Yeah. I mean, just to give like a brief background on like why I even started doing this stuff. honestly, like I just got really sick of outbound, so I came from agency where there wasn't so many KPIs at the agency I was at, but I just realized like everything I was doing was outbound. I'm emailing people, they don't know who I am. I'm having to do this. And I started noticing on LinkedIn, because that was the only platform I was using. I was actually against all social media for about 3 years. So I wasn't on Facebook, wasn't on any other Instagram, never really got into Instagram. But LinkedIn, I was still on, and I'd go through the news feed periodically, and I'd start hearing people talking about content and how you could use content to bring people towards you. And I was like, man, like it'd be so nice if people would, like approach me instead of me always approaching them. And then I just realized, like, I was like, well, why aren't we doing that at our company, at the company I was at the time? And, we're doing like blogs and stuff, but I'm like, who reads blogs? I'm like, there's this LinkedIn thing. So I tried it, and and actually the first go around was probably about 5 years ago. I tried like 2 posts and it didn't work out. So I gave up. And then 2 years later, I just made the commitment. I was like, you know what? I kind of enjoy writing. I'm going to just start putting myself out there. And probably most people would know my content now for, how it's kind of changed. But back then, I mean, it was bad content. Like, I mean, I remember one post specifically, I did something called emoji math. And I'd be like, yeah, I mean, this is bad. It was like a brain emoji plus like a workout equals money, like if you put your mind to something and work, like it was seriously really, really bad. And I'd be embarrassed to post something like that. But then as time went on, it just evolved, and I ran into people like James at Hirewell, who runs the talent rant, and I'm like, wow, his content like actually is good. So you start to run into people who have like really, really good content, and then you start to learn like, oh, I can say things. I have insights that I can say. So yeah, that's kind of how the background happened, and I love that we do so much content at Hirewell. I really I think that people I don't think people don't see the value of it all the time because it's super hard to like measure. Like you're not going to be able to measure how far this conversation goes, but after doing stuff this, for as long as I have, like you just know that it makes an impact. So yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I would say we've seen some impact just from the few episodes we've already been able to put out, just in increased engagement. Some additional messages. I don't know about you, Louie, but additional messaging from people on LinkedIn, additional connections and whatnot. And shameless plug for you, Joel, is that your content that you're putting on LinkedIn is how I found you and how I found Hirewell and how I ended up where I am. So, what is your follower count on your various accounts at this point?
Uh, like Twitter, I'm coming up to 6,000, and like don't knock. I mean, everyone says like Twitter, whatever. Elon just took over, but Twitter. I mean, last month, I had like 400,000 impressions. I actually had more people visit my profile on Twitter than I did on LinkedIn.
Well,
And then TikTok is, I mean, it's at like 20,000 now. But yesterday was at 18,000, so it's kind of going up pretty quickly. And then LinkedIn come up to 150,000 on there. But what I'll say is like, I mean, that's just like everything's compounding. And that was like the big thing that I learned is TikTok is a great example. I see a lot of people jumping over there. It took me a long time to get 1,000 followers. It took me even longer to get 10,000. But then I'd say that once you get to 10,000 on the platform, then everything's compounding. But again, like Twitter, I'm only at 6,000 followers on there, and I've been doing that for 3 years, and I've tweeted over like 5,000 times. So, it's a long game with the content. But to your point, like you don't have to be doing it that long for it to make an impact. And honestly, like I think it actually, if you have less engagement, sometimes like it can actually be a better thing because you kind of more approachable. And then, like you talk to a candidate and you're like, hey, especially Louie, I mean, you do sales positions, so obviously like athletes and sales, synonymously, related a lot of the time. So you're like, maybe you talk to them about sports on the call, or like you find that rapport, and then you talk to them, they're a great candidate, they're not interested in making a move, and then they see like 3 or 4 of these episodes, they get engaged in it, and then they're reaching out to you in like 2 months. Hey man, I'm just thinking about you. What do you got open right now? Boom, there you go. And you stay top of mind without sending those really annoying like follow-up messages like, has anything changed? It's like they're getting to know you, and there's something powerful when somebody has a conversation with you one-on-one, and then they start to see you show up. And especially with video, which doesn't get as much as engagement, but like when people are tuned into the video, it's really, really, really powerful. And yeah, I think it's actually less powerful for agency recruiters than it is for internal recruiters. I think internal recruiters that are working for brands, like they are really missing out if they're not creating content. But for us, it should be a no-brainer because it's just a great way to connect with people in a non-aggressive format.
But
Agreed 1,000%. Like, developing this content and kind of staying, I like to call it sticky. If you have that conversation, things don't work out in the short term, they see a few of these videos, they circle back around. And, as you mentioned, talking and maybe talking sports. Like, I actually talked with a candidate today, noticed he had coached hockey in Minnesota, which is talking to him about that. And then we dove into, I'm a Blackhawks fan. He's actually a Red Wings fan, like little banter that way. Granted, he's a fit for the role that I'm working on right now, but I think just that little tidbit mixed with content can keep a relationship going way beyond just a couple conversations.
Yeah, I love that. And
So
obviously, that's not the way you do. I mean, that's not the reason. Like, obviously, that is part of the reason you do it. But then also, like, I love that you guys are like talking about sports because it's like you're not gonna like one day be like, oh, I don't like this anymore. It's like you can just get on banter, and sports is always changing. So smart to make it about something you care about. Whereas a lot of times people approach it and it's like can be feel a little bit forced. But I think at Hirewell again, like we just done a good job in fostering that with people and like, hey, if you're passionate about something, like talk about it, and that's kind of where it starts. And then who knows where this is going to be? It could be a year from now, it's something completely different, but it happens naturally.
for sure. We talked about, we know how it works within your role. We know how this content and branding helps us in our roles as recruiters. Let's flip it over to the candidate side. Someone whether it be a job seeker or an individual, what can they do to build their brand and how would that benefit them?
Yeah, I mean, like this is huge too, because what you're seeing is it's kind of like that NIL thing, we're talking about with sports players, right? Like we're seeing that it's not just in sports people are building brands. It's not just movie stars. It's people professionally now are building brands. So like a great example of this would be there's a guy called Zach Wilson who's at Airbnb, and the guy, like I like his content. He's a really cool dude, but it's like he's talking about stuff I don't understand, like data engineering stuff. But it's like he's built this brand. Now he's got like 300,000 followers. It's valuable, right? Like it's a valuable thing. So I think to me, I was a candidate and I was looking for a job, the first thing I would probably focus on is more just engaging with people's content and like showing up in the comments, having conversations, having DMs with people in the conversations. And it's tough because when you're a job seeker, particularly if you're out of work, like there's obviously a level of like, hey, I want to get back to work. And that can oftentimes be interpreted or it can come out in like I don't want to say a desperate way, but it's like obviously you've got more of an emphasis on like trying to get those conversations started. But I think as much as you can, just like getting involved in the conversations you care about with the people that you are interested in connecting with, that helps. And I think in terms of like the content you could actually post, like to me, like the best thing to do is just look at people who are in your space that are already creating content and see what they're doing, and then seeing where you can either add to their conversation or create your own conversation because you don't need to reinvent a wheel with content. There's lots of people who are doing content, lots of people within different spaces. So like see what else is out there. And then you take what other people are doing and you make it your own and you add your own spin onto it. So that, I mean, and I think like creating content for job seekers, it could be a great thing because you're then like, you're doing something where you're solving and you're talking about the things that you care about. So if you're looking for an accounting job, as boring as accounting can be, somebody could turn accounting into something that's actually exciting. But even if it is like kind of like dry content, other accountants and other people will connect to it as well. And I think that's a piece that people get really, I think, defeated about is like engagement. And like you don't actually need that much engagement. Like you just don't. What you need is consistency. You need to care about what you're talking about and you need to deliver value. And if you deliver value to one person or 5 people, that's really, really valuable. And what you actually find is the more engagement you get, typically the content just gets really watered down and garbage anyway. And it's actually the best content creators are usually the ones who have like a really small niche like group that where they're just like value, 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 and the right people will hear it. I don't know. What do you think? Do you look at candidate activity when you're on LinkedIn, or like if somebody comments on your stuff, like how do you approach that? Like if a salesperson was to comment on this, like how would you approach that?
if it was someone I wasn't connected with, I would definitely, peruse their profile, probably send him a connection and, I would definitely take more notice than obviously someone that doesn't, like the, squeaky wheel gets oil sort of thing. If they're the ones that are reaching out to me, engaging on my content, like they're going to be someone that I'm going to take a look at and see maybe, hey, if they're looking at my content, let's just have a conversation. Maybe they're looking now, maybe they're looking down the line. It's a great way to start a conversation as well. So that's my experience. I mean, Dan, I'm sure you have some thoughts as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, stuff like this, these episodes we push out, I mean, we're pushing out content to engage an audience of people. If they don't engage back, we don't know who we're reaching. So those who do comment, those who like it, those who follow along, those are going to be the people that we see more often as it continues to grow, and the people that we, connect with more frequently. And those people will be front of mind for a lot of different things. I know I've had people I've connected with on LinkedIn who maybe 3-6 months down the road, I have a job pop up. Oh yeah, I remember this person. I talked to them about a role that we didn't have, now we do, and I've had them interview for jobs like that. So keep getting yourself in front of the right people, and like you said, another week, another cliche for Louie about squeaky wheel gets the oil.
It's funny though, because like I will say too, like I never get mad when somebody comments on my stuff, and I get a lot of comments, and like obviously if someone's like trolling me, then I'd make fun of them for it. But like outside of that, it's like if somebody shows up, like it's a good thing, and it's like honestly, like a lot of people who post on LinkedIn don't get really good engagement. So if you're like the person who is commenting, and I'm not saying like great, but it's like add to the conversation. Someone hears this and then they go, yeah, that the squeaky wheel getting oil. I love that. It's like you're obviously going to look at that and be like, oh, who is this? And I think like the important thing to remember for people is, and this is the same for any, with content in general, is like it's not like a magic hack that's just going to open up, millions of dollars or like a new job. It's another avenue to start a conversation, but it's not a guarantee either. And I think that's the piece which like I think a lot of people, that's why a lot of people give up, is because they think it's going to be this like thing that's just going to like produce results in a day or a week. But over time and with consistency, it just starts to create more conversations. And to me, that's the goal of it. And it doesn't matter if you're on TikTok, if you're on Twitter, if you're on Facebook, you can have conversations through social media, and it can start conversations. And I think it's a mindset change in like what you're actually doing. And I think if you approach it from that way, then there's less pressure of like it being something else, like you don't have to be an influencer or anything like that. I would probably say like you want to be a conversation starter, because I know plenty of influencers that have millions of followers that don't make any money or aren't actually that successful. But on the same hand, I know a lot of people who don't have a lot of followers that are just good at conversations, maybe not even on social media. Maybe they're just good at conversations through emails, and they're really successful because it's offline relationships still matter more than online, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and happy you mentioned instead of being an influencer, a conversation starter. Like I picture, back in school, I'm sure, you guys can relate. That person who does ask the actual question that everyone has, like everyone just doesn't want to raise their hand, and that gets that question answered by the teacher. Well, in this case, we're putting out content, and this content kind of addresses or talks about an issue we run into, anything under the sun, but it relates to recruiting. So whoever it is, Joey, Susie, Bobby, who's on LinkedIn looking at it, they're like, I've gone through this. Like they relate to it, they comment on it. And like you said, you find that kind of niche market. It's not like you're going to appeal to absolutely everyone,
No.
but I find the comments that I leave are mostly on posts that I'm like, oh, wow, someone's going through the same stuff I am. And it's comforting. And it's like, you know what? It makes the job, some of the negative sides or the downtimes about a job, a little bit easier, because you know that there's people out there that go through it. They're fighting through it. So should you.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. That's where with like, obviously I do a lot of like memes and like jokey type comment. And there have been times where I've been like, man, I don't know, maybe I need to stop this, right? Because it's like the jokes, if you're like a jokester, I mean, I don't know, like, do you trust business to that person? But I will tell you, like, a lot of the chief people officers that I have conversations with on my podcast or like just through networking, a lot of them reference like that they love like the hiring manager stuff, because it's like, internal, they can't really bash hiring managers. I mean, we can't really either, but it's like Dude, people appreciate that. And then someone recently asked me, they were like, well, what do hiring managers think? And obviously, I'm not so much in recruiting, but honestly, it's like, if you don't know that your process sucks, like, that's on you. I mean, it's just like we've all sat in the seat of being a candidate. You know, all these hiring managers, they've all gone through a job seeking process. And it's like when you approach things through humor, people don't really take it like personally. And I put reminders in there too, like, hey, I love hiring managers. That's the whole reason we have a job. Like the reason that the recruiting is so hard is the whole reason our business exists. So yeah. Anyway.
Absolutely. Well, Joel, I don't know if you've seen any of our episodes previously, but we like to end off with what we call the 2-minute drill.
I
Just
love it.
final thoughts, one last segment. What are your thoughts on a potential Hirewell NIL deal?
Dude, I love that. I think we already do that, but yeah, no, I think that could be a good move for the future.
We do love to brand, don't we?
There you go, dude. I love it.
Louie, if you could pick one athlete to bring in on a Hirewell NIL deal, who would it be?
I mean, given that we're Chicago centric, I probably would just say Patrick Kane. Probably my favorite athlete of any sport, and hockey being my Patrick Kane, 1000%.
There you go. I think we got to shoot for the stars. Arch Manning, he's going to commit to the University of Texas. We'll go big Jim McGuffin fan. We'll call it the Hirewell Hook'em. All big money right there. Well, Joel,
Cristiano, baby, that's who I'm going with. Cristiano, I got him. You know,
man,
I'm
I
nearly
thought
there.
I was shooting for the stars.
Yeah, we're gonna need a little more funding for that one.
Hey,
Matt,
we got Cristiano. He's a free agent, man. Nobody wants to even have him, so maybe he can join the Hirewell team. And you know, I'm only like 0.001% away from him in follower count, so I think it's a done deal.
It's neck and neck, really.
Yeah, I mean, he's seen my gifs. I'm pretty sure.
Matt, James, if you're watching, take notes. We're going to be coming with these ideas shortly.
Yeah, let's get Triton exec. They probably have the connection in Europe with Cristiano. Let's do this.
There you go. Joel, appreciate you jumping on. Excellent first guest segment for us here at the Hirewell Hot Corner. Louie, a pleasure as always. And everyone else out there, thank you for tuning in again to the Hirewell Hot Corner. Join us again for our next installment in 2 weeks. And as always, stay classy, LinkedIn.
See you guys.